Hi everybody, it is Vicki Ross. I'm here today with a partial head that I had decided to put the camera on. So I'm working on the Inktober 2020 challenge, and in particular, Chris Legaspi had a challenge of drawing heads, and he is uh, an illustrator by trade, and drawing realistic heads and faces is what he does. I'm not an illustrator by trade. I draw to understand how to paint faces and heads better. So there's a difference there. I'm not looking for a super realistic outcome. So this is mainly study work for me. In particular, I'm liking so far he's having us practice just an overall shape instead of a circle and then something under it for a chin. Here I think I'm kind of working with the best of both. The cross in the middle, the plus sign cross, those two lines, the vertical and the horizontal axis, should be perpendicular to each other. That never changes. It doesn't matter what position the head's in. Now, from that point to the eye to the ear can curve one way or the other depending on how the head is being held. And the middle line in a circle is for the eye line. And then above that, guess at 3/4 of an inch or so, and that's your brow line. Working on that ear. The way the ear attaches is from the corner of the eye. Wait just a minute. It attaches on that horizontal axis line for the top of the ear. Now, what goes on after the ear attaches is unique to every person. So it's where it attaches. And you'll hear different people have different ways of doing it. They'll say the top of the ear is lines up with the brow line, and so on and so forth. So you just kind of have to pick something that makes sense to you and practice it, and then switch if you find something that appeals to you better or makes more sense to you. The bottom of the ear attaches where the nose is. I usually try to draw my studies with an eye that's about 3/4 of an inch wide, 3/4 to an inch. That way I've got enough room to get some good detail. The nose is 2 eye widths down from the brow line. So you measure across the nose and one eye, and you'll get the length of the nose from the brow line. And then that's where the ear attaches. And the ear attaches at the bottom following the same diagonal angle that the eye did. I know this sounds like Greek if you've never studied it. And it is a tool. You won't always need this tool. This is, like a carpenter having a T-square, or he may always use it, but his instinct might tell him where it's going to be before he measures it. So that's what we're working here. We're trying to develop tools in our toolbox that we can pull out and use anytime we want. So I might use this method from Chris Legaspi for a while, and then I'll put in a few things from somebody else that I've learned how to do faces with, and I may end up doing a little bit of both. I will fall into the perfect formula for me, and then in a month or so I might change it. So it's constantly in flux. And the pencil I'm using here is a Kohinoor magic pencil. It has 3 colors of lead. I think it's 2 colors of orange and 1 of yellow. And they're fun to work with. Now the other measurement that you may see me use, I may not use it right here, but from the eyebrows to the hairline, let's back up. Let's go eyebrows to the bottom of the nose, because you've pretty well established that from the beginning. So the brow line to the bottom of the nose is 2 eyes. It also equals 1/3 of the circle. No, not 1/3 of the circle, 1/3 of the whole face. So let's do the hairline first. Okay, so we go the same measurement from the brow line to the bottom of the nose. From the brow line to the top of the head is where the hairline is. And your actual head is a little bit above that. So now what you can do is you can measure the brow line from brow line to the hairline, and then come from the nose to the chin. And that will be if you are measuring in thirds. See, I'm measuring right there. This is, I tend to call this drawing or painting from the inside out, where you have the measurements on your paper before you start painting. So you're working from an eyeball out to the hair. I really do a little bit better if I work from the outside in. In other words, work from the bigger shape of the head down to the smaller shape of an eye. And then I fall back on this method to measure it to see what my accuracy is. Now, somebody always says, well, not everybody's different. This is for the perfect face. These measurements were determined, golly, back Leonardo when they were all making up the golden mean and the architecture from the Greeks and everything, that this measurement was the perfect face. So if you can get it to this point, then you are ready to tackle the individual pieces, which is maybe the nose might be a little wider than the perfect face. Right now, the perfect face, the nose is pretty much exactly the width of one eye. The eyebrow might be plucked in a female case, or it might be very bushy in an old man's face. And the mouth could have a twerk or a grin or whatever, but this is the basic outline. This gets you started. The other thing I want to point out is that learning to draw a full front face where all the measurements are perfectly vertical and perfectly horizontal to the world is fairly easy using this measuring method. But the difficulty comes when the first difficulty is if the model turns their head one direction or another. This model turned his head to the right, his right. So the eye on the far right will be a little bit shorter in width than the full eye that's now toward the center. Does that make sense? It's kind of a foreshortening thing. So that's why the width of the nose comes into play so importantly. If you're looking at the nose straight on, excuse me, it will just about be from the corner of the eye, the inside corner of the eyes is the measurement. And when you have a head tilted to the side, the nose where it crosses over that other eye on the far right to the inside corner of the left eye is pretty much an eyeball width. So you do all this fancy measuring and all this, and then you someday you just take out and start drawing it. Everything kind of seems to fall in place. But it falls in place because this has been the focus of some study. . And I'm drawing with an ink pen here, a .05 ballpoint pen. And I don't really like using it because if you make a mark, it's there. You can't do anything with it. You have to be real careful not to get too dark with it. I'm going to go on record right here and say I'm not that crazy about ballpoint. I've seen a lot of people do it and they're very successful with it. But that doesn't mean I like it. I don't want anything that makes it harder for me. I'm working on the eyes. Briefly, the eyes give people trouble because you kind of think in your mind that it's the amount of the ball that's showing, the amount of the eyeball is the eye. The eye socket is all the way to the brow line down almost halfway of the nose. It's a good size shape. You can draw it as a circle, you can draw it as a hexagon, whatever, but it's a good size shape. And the ball of the eye fits inside that socket perfectly, so it's very big. And so then the lids, the eyelid on the top and the bottom, are what make the eye look like an eye. So those measurements are pretty well set in stone. So if you want to think about it that way. And I learned a new trick from Chris where instead of drawing the eye socket round like you do in Day of the Dead skulls, you draw it with, you can feel it on your face. If you go to the top of your brow on the outside corner, and move your finger down, the line slopes to the outside of your head. So it's a gentle slope and it slopes in. So the line is actually, the eyeball is actually sunk in from the brow bone. And that's a matter of protection. And then the bottom of the socket is a little bit more rounded back up to the inner corner of the eyebrow. Now I'm studying a little bit of the planes of the face. Those are the fat areas in some cases. The flat area, the shapes that make up a flat transition on the face. It's not totally round. And anytime, let's say the roundness of the cheek, anytime the roundness of the cheek comes into play, if you turn that into an angular shape, part of that shape going away from the light is going to be a cooler color, same value but a cooler color. If it's coming toward the light, it's going to be a lighter value, same value but warmer as it comes toward the light. Again, that's a generality. If you've got a model that's sitting under a blue light, that's all going to change. But we're talking basics here. And in painting, I was just taught to put the paint on and you kind of do what you see. But this studying the planes of the face is a very good tool. So I'll probably spend some time in the next few months working on that. If you want to see what I'm talking about, it's the Asaro head. Asaro. One side of the face, it's a model, it's a full-size model in plastic. One side of the face is angular marks, angular shapes, so you can see where they start and end, depending on where you have that head turned. And the other side of the face is with those angular edges knocked off so that it becomes more rounded, like I just explained that's where I paint from, not from the angular side. But it never hurts to have another tool that you can use when you want to. Particularly if I decided I wanted to do angular shapes on a face and make each one a different color than a flesh tone. Say like I want her to use a turquoise for the cool ones, and maybe a salmon pink for the warmer sides of that shape. I learned that people do this for hair sometimes. They just indicate the big shape of it and just fill it in with real light lines, and they're done. Because the point of the exercise is to practice the facial features in a lot of cases. And that's what people learn in art schools. Or they're supposed to learn in art schools. We all tend, in this day, me too, tend to want to jump right in with the painting when we don't have the skill set of the rudimentary ways to draw a face or a head. So, of course, we're disappointed when it doesn't turn out good. And well, it's because you decided you wanted to play football and you joined a college team instead of the Pee Wee League. You missed out on all the basics. In the beginning of this, Chris had us doing timed poses, which are very, very useful for study. 5 minutes, and you just basically get your basic lines in. But what it does is just a way of practicing and making your muscle control such that your hand and your brain and your eye all work together. And then there might be 2 30-minute poses, and there might be an hour-long pose. And there are several websites out there. One is Croquis Cafe, Croquis Cafe, and they have nude models that do timed poses as if you were in an academic setting. And then another one is drawthis.com. And their models wear flesh-colored swimsuits or bodysuits or something like that for the most part. And using one of those services is the next best thing to working from life. Actually being in the room with the model. I've done that several times, but more when I was in my earlier stages of painting and drawing. Here, draw a figure, and there's a nude man standing in front of you, and you're in France, and you don't want to giggle because that's not the done thing. And you don't know, I didn't know the first rudimentary hows of drawing a figure with straight lines. Like the pose might show action, like they were running, or I didn't know the first thing about that. But I still got something I put my name on. And then trying to work in watercolor instead of charcoal. I also was not trying to get a total likeness of the model. I could have fiddle-farted with that for another 3 hours. But these are just quick studies, just cause. I remember the first time one of my tutors and later a mentor sat down and just took a ballpoint pen and a piece of scrap paper, I think it was an envelope or something, and drew a face without looking at anything. I thought, how does he do that? Well, now I know. It's because he was paying attention to the perfect face measurements. And, there was another trick, too. He was not painting as a drawing, like from something like this. He was drawing shapes, not the shapes of the Asaro head, but the shapes of the shadows that fell on the head. For example, the eye on the right, well, not necessarily. whichever eye is away from the light, that corner of the inside corner of the eye and that nose is the darkest place on a face. So if you know that, you can draw that shape. Just use the left eye, his left eye. You would just draw a shadow over the brow line and curve it down to about the length of a nose. Curve it down still, and you're still making one mark. Another mark on his upper lip on the left side, and over both the upper and lower lip on the left side, and then that mark would curve under where the lower lip would go. And in his case, you don't draw a lower lip, you just emulate where it's going to be with the shadow shape. Famous artist recently departed, Daniel Green, Greene, was a proponent of painting just by following the shadow shapes. If you do them first, you've got your face. Again, that's a tool. And you can't fall in love with a tutor's tools, because by the time you figure it out, they will have moved on to a different tool. We always change, always morph and try something new, and try to challenge yourself to figure out why that works and if it makes sense to blend with your toolbox and what you know from other people that you've studied. So that's one reason why art holds my attention, is because it's never the same. It's always changing. And I believe he is just about done. I am so proud of myself because it's the first time I've accepted a challenge that I finished all 31 days. I was proud. But of course, we were doing head studies, and that's my favorite thing. So now I'm looking at some of the finer points and trying to fix them with a ballpoint pen, which you really can't do. And I didn't film all of mine because I was studying a new, not totally new, but it's not one that I've used very much, method. So I needed to be quiet and pay attention to what I was doing. A little more shading, fiddle farting with it now. And as a portrait artist, I have to break the habit of trying to get perfect likeness. All right, I'll see you guys next time.